to build a strong India. Q. What does the Mid-Year Economic Survey II tell about status of Indian economy today? Critically examine. 200 words. The Hindu introduction. The Mid Economic Survey tabled in Parliament has highlighted following aspects. Fiscal developments. The fiscal outcome of the central government in 2016 to 17 was marked by strong growth in tax revenue, sustenance of the pace of capital spending and consolidation of non-salary/pension revenue expenditure. This combination allowed the government to contain a fiscal deficit to 3.5% of GDP in 2016 to 17. The Union budget for 2017 to 18 opted for a gradual fiscal consolidation path. The fiscal deficit is expected to decline to 3.2% of GDP in 2017 to 2018. The fiscal deficit target of 3% of GDP under the FRBM framework is projected to be achieved in 2018 to 19. The budget for 2017 to 18 introduced a number of procedural reforms, including the integration of the railway budget with the union budget, advancing of the date of the union budget to February 1st, almost by a month, elimination of the classification of expenditure into plan and non-plan, and restructuring of the medium-term expenditure framework statement with projected expenditures, revenue, and capital for each demand for the next 2 financial years. Overshadowing these otherwise significant fiscal policy initiatives is the introduction of the Goods and Services Tax with effect from the first day of July 2017, encompassing a plethora of the central and state-level indirect taxes, paving the way for a dramatic transformation of the Indian markets and economy. Monetary management and financial intermediation. The Reserve Bank of India cut the policy rate by 50 basis points during 2016 to 17. However, it shifted its monetary policy stance from accommodative to neutral in February 2017. As of August 2017, repo rate stood at 6.00% and reverse repo rate at 5.75%. Sluggish growth and increasing indebtedness in some sectors of the economy have impacted the asset quality of banks, and this is a cause for concern. The gross non-performing advances GNPA's ratio of SCBs rose from 9.2% in September 2016 to 9.5% in March 2017. www.insightsinIndia.com 10 www.insightsis.com. Financial inclusion is proceeding the pace under the Pradhan January Yojana. Zero balance accounts under PMJE has declined consistently from nearly 58% in March 2015 to around 24% as of December 2016. Prices and inflation. Significant moderation in CPI headline inflation during the last 3 years. CPI inflation fell to a series low of 1.5% in June 2017. Broad-based decline in all commodity groups during 2016 to 17, the most significant being decline in food. Food inflation, which was the main driver of inflation in the past, declined significantly during the year because of improvements in supply of pulses and vegetables on the back of a normal monsoon. Corn inflation, indicative of underlying trends, to decline in the last few months. Convergence between CPI and WPI inflation in the last few months. Most states/UTs witnessed sharp decline in CPI inflation in 2016 to 17 as compared to the previous year. Both rural and urban inflation have declined in 2016 to 17, and the gap between rural and urban inflation has narrowed down in recent months. External sector. India's balance of payments situation, which was benign and comfortable during 2013 to 14 to 2015 to 16, further improved in 2016 to 17 as a result of low and falling trade and current account deficits and moderate and rising capital inflows, resulting in further accretion of foreign exchange reserves. Reflecting the slowly improving world economic situation, India's exports turned positive at 12.3% in 2016-17 after an interregnum of 2 years. This, along with a marginal decline in imports by 1.0%, resulted in narrowing down of trade deficit to $112.4 billion, 5% of GDP in 2016-17 as compared to $130.1 billion, 6.2% of GDP in 2015-16. Agriculture and food management. The average farm size in India is small and declining since 1970-71. The predominance of small operational holdings is a major limitation to reap the benefits of economies of scale in agriculture operations. The progress in agriculture needs to be evaluated in terms of outcomes such as catching up with global yields of various crops as a means to increase incomes of farmers. Credit is an important mediating input for agriculture to improve productivity. The predominance of informal sources of credit for farmers is a concern. There is regional disparity in the distribution of agricultural credit, which also needs to be addressed. The key challenge that the horticulture sector faces in India are post-harvest losses, availability of quality planting material, and lack of market access for horticultural produce of small farmers. Industry and infrastructure industrial performance has shown a moderation from 8.8% during 2015 to 16 to 5.6% in 2016 to 17. Industrial growth as per Index of Industrial Production IIP New Series of 2011 to 12 shows overall IIP growth at 5% in 2016 to 17 as compared to 3.4% last year. The index of core industries growth during 2016 to 17 was 4.8% as compared to 3.0% in 2015-16. The government in 2016 introduced imposition of minimum import price MIP to counter dumping of steel into Indian markets. Steps taken by the government have borne fruit since imports of steel by India have declined by 36.2% while exports have risen by 102% in 2016 to 17. Critical side, overall, there is concern that the economy is in a deep hole. www.insightsinIndia.com 11 www.insightsays.com. Hasty implementation of the goods and services tax GST has paralyzed the informal manufacturing sector, which lives on the edge, often saddled with debt. Protests in the textile hub of Surat reflect how GST is affecting medium, small and micro-scale enterprises. The private sector is not borrowing and the manufacturing sector is operating at a historically low capacity utilization of 70%. The latest IIP shows a contraction of 0.1% in June 2017. Neither credit nor investment will increase until the government addresses the twin balance sheets problem. We are seeing job destruction. The Center for Monitoring Indian Economy reports that 1.5 million jobs were lost during January-April 2017. Overall, the real state of India's economy is deeply worrying. The latest RBI surveys of consumer confidence, industrial outlook, and professional forecasters point to pessimism on all fronts except inflation management. Q. What are the parameters that define great power? Can India be considered an emerging great power? Discuss. 200 words. BPWANF. Great powers are defined by their credibility around the world and how much they influence the global geopolitical scenario. Just as the 1900s was considered the American century, the 21st century will be recognized as the Asian century, when the perceptive rise of India and China will steer inclusive growth and development in the region. India's rising stature in the global sphere has led it to compete with emerging great powers, primarily China. India readily enters the top ranks of emerging great powers when its power is measured in terms of material capabilities, such as economic and military strength. Notwithstanding India's growing global stature, opinions are divided on India's claim to great power status. Whether India shows a sense of responsibility similar to that of the great powers, if material capabilities alone make India a great power, etc., are the questions challenging her great power status. Parameters for defining great power. There are 10 major criteria that combine hard power indices: military, economic, technological, and demographic power. Soft power indices: leadership in international institutions, culture, state capacity, strategy/diplomacy, and national leadership. On the hard power scale, India has shown exemplary growth on technological and economic grounds, but failing desperately to assert itself military. India's claim for great power status is rooted preeminently on its civilizational and soft power strongholds. The fact that it is indeed one of the oldest and greatest civilizations, unlike other middle powers such as Indonesia, Brazil, and Nigeria, India has both a destiny and an obligation to play larger roles on the international scale. India as a great power, the demographic dividend makes India the human resource capital of the world. Indians have a significant presence in all major nations, especially Middle East. While the world is suffering slowdown and stagnation, India is growing at a rate of 7% and provides ventures for international investment. The humanitarian efforts taken in Afghanistan and Africa, wartime rescue operations as in Operation Day Egypt, etc. make India the benevolent nation in eyes of the world. India has been a flag bearer of peace with largest peacekeeping force. Since the times of Nehru, India through 120 member nations has led the interests of third world nations. The same we continued by voicing their concerns in WTO and other global platforms. www.insightsanindia.com 12 www.insightsas.com. Our multilingual, multicultural, multi-religious society makes us ethnically closer to many nations, which bears a great influence. India has been a widely trusted nation with its leadership based on firm ideologies. Our historical legacy of contributing to world's growth, peace and prosperity make us a great power in the true sense. Shortfalls. India is considered a limited hegemon because of its failure to take up responsibilities and share the global burden, and for being unable to be the supplier of global public goods. Problems of insurgency, naxalism, terrorism, regional and linguistic chauvinism, corruption, drug abuse, poverty, high global burden of diseases, inability to have its way in WTO, etc. Dependence on exports for defense. Conclusion, India as an emerging power faces many challenges of poverty, internal conflicts, political instability in the domestic and regional ambit, as well as economic and security issues in the global realm. Hence, India's preoccupation ought to be directed at reforming the market structure, developing infrastructure to hasten growth of the manufacturing sector at the domestic level, rather than increasing India's dependence on an export-led economic system. Such economic agendas called for significant changes in the domestic sphere, allocation of more funds to the social sector, job creation for the unemployed youth, health and sanitary issues, and an inclusive development agenda. This will ensure that a distinct identity can be furthered, instead of India merely emulating norms and practices constructed and sustained by countries with different social structures and domestic concerns. Only an inclusive and all-round developmental agenda can allow India's inclusion in the Great Power Club in a true sense, where development of its people will coincide with the development of the nation. Topic: employment. Few many forces, economic, societal, and technological, are interacting to cause jobless growth in India. In your opinion, what policies will create more employment in India? Discuss. 200 words. Live introduction. When a major emerging economy grows significantly, you would expect job growth to follow closely. Sadly, this is not the case for India. Between 2005 and 2012, India's GDP growth was 54%, but its net job growth was only 3%. There were only about 15 million net new jobs. Factors cutting across the socio-economic and technical areas like less growth of manufacturing sectors, social unrest in areas like Kashmir, increased emphasis on artificial intelligence, driverless cars, robotics penetration are interacting to cause jobless growth in India. Some of the policies can be followed. Appoint the National Jobs Advisor to the Prime Minister in the PMO. The advisor would align job growth planning with economic planning, ensure integration of the multiple but siloed job-related policies across central ministries, as well as with the states, enable sharing of best practices between states, and provide a liaison between government and the private sector. Create a vast, integrated, national ecosystem for entrepreneurship education, mentoring and support. Entrepreneurship is about state of mind, and about having access to an ecosystem in which startup and growth ideas can be explored, not snuffed out. Make it easy for startups to actively contribute to India's growth trajectory. We need 1 million startups with growth potential, with many of these outside the tech sector. Startup India addresses many but not all the needs of entrepreneurs. Access to a national network of mentors and angel investors, and easy access to government procurement opportunities with simplified rules are essential. www.insightsanindia.com 13 www.insightsas.com. Enable growth in existing small and medium enterprises SMEs. While startups, especially digital startups, are glamorous, SMEs are the growth backbone of any nation and primary drivers of job growth. In India, 70% of the job growth during 2005 to 12 came from SMEs with 6+ employees. Yet India's policies favor micro enterprises, defined as businesses with investment of less than Rs 25 lakh, with 1 to 6 employees typically, which do not drive job growth because they are neither able to invest in capital equipment nor be competitively productive. India's archaic classifications of micro, small and medium businesses, based on invested capital, need to be scrapped and policies reimagined to encourage every business to grow to become the medium business, or larger, creating a more dynamic economy and more jobs. Launch a major startup and small business innovation initiative (SSBI). Some 40 years ago, the U.S. launched Small Business Innovation and Research Initiative, wherein various government departments allocate funding for innovation by SMEs, selected through an open, competitive process. This has helped create thousands of new companies and millions of new, quality jobs. Neglecting narrow visions and adopting broad visionary policies like some economists are taunting the government to get tough and change labor laws to make it easier for employers to fire their employees. This will not create more dignified and better paying livelihoods around the country, which should be the government's goal. Focusing agricultural sector, utilize agriculture as an engine to raise on-farm incomes and purchasing power, generate additional on-farm employment opportunities, and stimulate rural industrialization and services. These would in turn increase demand for agricultural products, manufactured goods and services throughout the economy, creating a multiplier effect that generates jobs in other sectors. Conclusion: the Union government must focus on policies that will generate more dignified and sustainable livelihoods than the Indian economy is presently producing. The ideology of greater freedom for capital and investors is being confronted globally with demands for more fairness for all. While ensuring employers have the flexibility they need, Indian laws ensuring fair treatment of all workers must be more effective than they are. Constraints on the formation and growth of small enterprises must be reduced. Overall, social security must be provided in various forms by skilling